Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thanks again to the organizers for putting together this great event. It's a pleasure to be here at the Metropolis Conference. As you can already see behind me, basically I'm going to pick up where Diego's presentation left off, because the link we were really interested in was if the amount of hate speech and misinformation that is circulating on social media indeed also has any real-life effects. And in particular, we were interested if anti-migrant and anti-refugee speech in Germany is powerful enough to push individual perpetrators over the edge to commit violent incidents. And in the next 10 minutes, probably I will try to basically show you the evidence me and my co-author Carsten Müller have collected over the last years on this relationship. As Diego already briefly mentioned, we are going to focus on Germany in the years 2015 until the beginning of 2017, through the height of the European migration crisis. And with this influx of more than 1 million refugees in Germany also came an unfortunate increase in the number of anti-refugee incidents. And this connection between media and what you're exposed to in media, and that this can basically influence your behavior, is nothing new, because there's now pretty good evidence basically for a lot of other media platforms. So there, Adena et al. In 2012 collected evidence that exposure to anti-Semitic propaganda in Nazi Germany was associated with increases in anti-Semitic crime later on in the Nazi era. We have evidence for the exposure to violent movies, for basically the link of television to domestic violence, and lastly the broadband internet and its potential connection to increases in sex crime. So we already have evidence for other media platforms, therefore it seems a natural question to ask if a similar link might work in social media as well. And as Diego already pointed out, there are several things that set social media apart from these original media platforms. First, it is the self-selection and the creation of social media echo chambers. Secondly, it is the interaction you get on social media platforms where you are able to change yourself with other people, mostly of a similar opinion. And this finally basically leads to the deliberation of political ideas within the echo chambers that has been shown to increase political polarization and also makes people develop more and more extreme ideologies. Therefore, it seems an important question to ask if these social media and the anti-refugee rhetoric played a role in the rise in anti-refugee incidents in Germany. What this map you see here now visualizes is the geospatial distribution of anti-refugee incidents in Germany. We have in our data, overall our data covers 3,335 anti-refugee incidents, ranging from property damage to refugee homes, cases of assault, cases of arson, and also anti-refugee demonstrations in Germany. And it's immediately apparent that these incidents are widely dispersed over the entirety of Germany, and there's not a single federal state in Germany in which no anti-refugee incident occurred. And what we will do now in an analysis, which I will basically try to explain to you in common terms, is we will analyze the amount of anti-refugee speech that is around in German social media based on the Facebook page of the Alternative for Germany. And we will compare areas in Germany, in particular German municipalities with high Facebook usage, relative to areas in Germany with low Facebook usage. And what we would expect if Facebook usage plays any role in the propagation of anti-refugee sentiments, we would expect to observe more anti-refugee incidents in areas with high Facebook usage, particularly in points in time when we observe spikes in anti-refugee sentiment online. And this is what we indeed find. Just as already mentioned, we are collecting data from the Facebook page of the Alternative for Germany, the largest far-right anti-refugee party in Germany. And interestingly, the AfD also has the strongest social media following of any party in Germany. So it has more followers than the Christian Democratic Union of Angela Merkel, and also freely allows their users to post their own content, which basically, as a result of these policies, the AfD has more posts, comments and likes on the Facebook page than all other parties in Germany combined, just to give you an idea of how interactive this exchange is. And as an example of the rhetoric you can find on the AfD's Facebook page, we translated the following post of one of the users. He posts that maybe there's a plot for German Jews to be exterminated by the large stream of refugees, but what could be the reason? World War II. And I think in this post already, basically, it's surprisingly easy to find this kind of rhetoric, which also aligns very well with the standard cliches against refugees that Diego already mentioned. And we are going to use this type of post to create a measure of anti-refugee sentiment on German social media. Here now I want to show you basically some introductory data. So what we do in this graph is we compare the number or the probability of an anti-refugee incident occurring in municipalities without and with at least one AfD user. And it is immediately obvious in this graph that as soon as a municipality has at least one AfD user, the probability is 3 times higher that in our observation period we're going to observe an anti-refugee incident. Similar patterns also emerge if you look at the connection of anti-refugee incidents and anti-refugee posts over time in Germany. And you immediately see that, at least to some extent, these graphs move in tandem, and weeks in which we observe a lot of anti-refugee incidents are also the weeks in which we observe a lot of anti-refugee posts. And now in our analysis, basically we are going to put these 2 elements together and compare the same municipalities over time, dependent on the amount of anti-refugee sentiment that is circulating on German social media. And what we find is the following. This figure basically on the x-axis, so the horizontal axis, you see the number of refugee posts on the AfD's Facebook page, while on the vertical axis you see the number of anti-refugee incidents. And we've split German municipalities into municipalities with high and low Facebook usage. And what you see is these municipalities behave relatively similarly at times of low anti-refugee sentiment. But as soon as we observe more anti-refugee sentiment circulating in German social media, we observe this disproportionate increase in anti-refugee incidents in these areas with high Facebook usage. And this observation we have in our data, this is very stable. We can basically take into account the political preferences of these people, the socioeconomic background, the age structure, the media consumption patterns. This pattern always sticks out. And to now, in the end, really get to a causal link between the amount of anti-refugee speech and anti-refugee hate crime. What we do in our analysis is we compare areas with the same amount of Facebook usage, but we analyze what happens if one of these areas is now cut off from the internet due to an internet outage. And again, following the same logic, if Facebook is propagating anti-refugee sentiment, we would expect to observe more anti-refugee incidents in the areas that are not suffering from an internet outage relative to the areas that do. And this is exactly what we observe also in our data. So this plot is basically identical to the one you saw before. It now just separately plots the number of anti-refugee incidents as squares at the bottom of the graph. And basically this reveals the striking pattern you see behind me, that while you usually observe increases in anti-refugee incidents with the amount of anti-refugee sentiment, this relationship completely breaks down in municipalities and weeks that suffer an internet outage, indeed indicating that if you are cut off from social media and not exposed to the anti-refugee speech, you are indeed not reacting to it, very much in line with this propagation mechanism. We repeat this analysis also for Facebook outages, and a similar picture emerges. And based on this evidence, we, at least me and my co-author, conclude that it seems likely that there is a connection between the exposure of to anti-refugee sentiment on social media and basically the willingness of people to commit anti-refugee incidents. So to quickly conclude here on time, basically, just to open up also for the wider picture and also for the potential later discussion, this mechanism we are documenting for the spread of anti-refugee violence should apply also to other countries and other minority groups. Nothing in our analysis should be particular to Germany, and in fact me and my co-author, we are working also on similar projects for the Yes and Twitter usage. As Diego already mentioned, we focus on a particular negative example where basically we focus on the far right and how individual people are pushed to commit violent incidents, while a similar mechanism might be at play on the other side of the political spectrum. So the people who are pro-refugee might become more pro-refugee or pro-migration due to their exposure to pro-migration content on social media. Just to finally conclude with the potential suggestions, I'm happy to discuss also later on when we open up to general questions. Personally, I would caution against advocating for censorship of social media. The reasons for this are twofold. First, it is not clear yet if censorship actually would solve the problem. And secondly, since there's no clear definition of hate speech everyone in this room probably could even agree on, it is not clear basically what posts should be removed and which posts should be left online. Therefore, censorship, at least to me, does not seem to be the right solution. When it comes to basically tackling anti-refugee sentiment and anti-refugee violence, our research on the one hand suggests that knowing about the amount of anti-refugee sentiment and the locations of social media users might help the police to prevent crime, since we are technically able to predict violent or anti-refugee incidents with some probability in advance, which of course could help the police to prevent these crimes. And lastly, I think it's important that we find ways to develop counter-narratives and break up these social media echo chambers, so people who are already harboring anti-refugee sentiments are not over and over again exposed to the amount of anti-refugee hate speech that we currently have circulating on social media. On this note, I conclude, and I'm happy to basically answer any of your questions later on in the panel discussion. Thanks.